part of what the challenge is these days is that cancel culture is predicated on pervasive distrust. Mm-hmm. I do not believe that you respect me, so I must police you. And I don't even trust that what you say, you're saying what you mean.
That's exactly correct.
Is that
That's
makes
exactly
sense?
correct.
But see, when I get that from a younger brother, I feel very good. I feel very because
That's the crux of it. That's the crux of it.
Because I getting older and start floating away from reality. I got to be checked. I got to be corrected. Yes, indeed.
Well, I want to hear now. You co-signed what he said. What was it that spoke to you?
Well, he identified something that doesn't get mentioned enough in the debate about what's called cancel culture. It's an imperfect term, but it's the term that we have. In the summer of 2020, 4 friends and I drafted a letter on open debate and free speech. It's been called the Harpers Letter, and it was signed by 153 really powerful intellects, including Dr. West, but across the spectrum. J.K. Rowling signed it, Margaret Atwood, Salman Rushdie. I mean, really, like, we were trying to say that we need to foster a culture of maximal tolerance. And what shocked me about this was I thought, it was a pretty straightforward declaration that just, don't, try to shame, stigmatize, and mob people and force their employers to punish them if you disagree with them. Beat bad ideas with better ideas. Engage in debate. Don't lock yourself in an ideological echo chamber. And what started happening when this letter was published was that people said, that sounds fine, but that's not what they mean. Or that sounds fine, but this person's signature means that this is anti-trans because J.K. Rowling signed it. Or that sounds fine, but this is actually anti-Palestinian because Barry Weiss signed it, and on and on and on. And there's this lack of trust that you can even be saying what you mean. And without that, I don't see how you have, a redemptive society at all. You have this kind of balkanized society where everybody's suspicious and guarding themselves and keeping tabs. That's the other thing technology is doing to us. We're performing our values every day, not just because we believe them, but we're watching each other and knowing that we're being watched. And so we're performing these values and we're policing these values and then we're self-policing. And it's really constraining and it's ruining it, like the liveliness of intellectual debate that like an open society depends on.
That's very true. That's very true. Because the wounds will always be there in one form or another. Gender-based, religious-based, and so forth and so on. Nation-based, regionally based, and so on. The question is, how do we forge waves of wounded healers rather than wounded hurters? That's the best we human beings can do. That's who we are as a species. We've got wretchedness and we've got possibility. We've got miserable and we're great because we understand that we're miserable, as Pascal reminds us, but we can be better. We can leave the world a little better. That's our precious Jewish brothers and sisters. Tikkun olam. Amend the world, but know that you'll never be able to fully do it, but do it as much as you can relative to what your calling is. That's what I love about this brother. He's got a calling, not just a career. He's got a vocation, not just a profession. The only way we have a moral and spiritual renaissance in a spiritually decaying culture is have a spiritual awakening and moral renaissance in which integrity, honesty, decency, and courage become appealing to people. Really appealing, highly attractive.
With pervasive gun violence in our country, how do we heal a nation that believes youth are strong enough to deal with weapons, but too weak to deal with words?
Wow. That's a great question.
It really
because
is.
it gets to one of the real paradoxes of contemporary American culture, is that somehow, there's this notion that kids are always endangered by being introduced to ideas around race and gender and lots of other kind of you can also, it doesn't have to be a left-right thing. There's the idea that, people need trigger warnings if they encounter a novel that was written before the 1990s, maybe. There's this idea that kids are inherently fragile and need to be protected from views that they're not ready for. But at the same time, we have this idea that, children can be inculcated into a culture that fetishizes and worships extraordinary forms of violence, and that worships a kind of attachment to guns that, I've been living for 12 years in Europe. It's just astonishing, the story that happened today in Texas. You just do not encounter a story like that in nations that we compare ourselves to in terms of wealth and education and access to resources, even to poorer countries. It's just appalling. And the question gets to the irresolvability of it. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. It's just one of those things you notice about contemporary American society. We're protecting kids from drag queen story hour at the same time that they're being murdered in their homes by people that have the right to get an AR-15 now without even having to get a permit.
Absolutely. So true. It's so true.
Wonderful.
But yet at the same time, that California and Canada have roughly the same population. And more Californians kill each other with knives than Canadians kill each other with anything. Now, see, that's cultural. You see. So all the gun control in the world, which I think needs to be, seriously considered and even promoted. One argues that it's preferable, and I think in many ways it is. But all the gun control in the world can't deal with the shaping of cells that understand moral regeneration through violence.